Hello everyone, these are the Eureka Daily Readings for January 10th. We're starting where we left off yesterday in the Logos, Volume 1 on page 45. We're going to start with the second paragraph, the Apocalypse in Amos. Amos, who is contemporary with Isaiah, adds his testimony to a like effect. He says that Jehovah will roar from Zion and utter his voice from Jerusalem, but that he will do nothing without first revealing it unto his servants, the prophets. He predicted that the 10 tribes of Israel should be carried into captivity beyond Damascus, that there should come a famine of hearing the words of Jehovah, and that Israel should run to and fro to seek the word, but should not find it, as it has come to pass for the past 1800 years. He foretold the desolation of the kingdom in all its elements, but also that Jehovah will not utterly destroy the house of Jacob, but that he would sift them among all nations as grain is sifted into a sieve, yet that not one good seed should fall to the earth to rise no more. For that when the indignation shall be completed, Jehovah will raise up the dwelling place of David that is fallen, and close up the breaches thereof. He will raise up David's ruins and build the kingdom, as in the days of old, that they who shall inherit it may possess the remnant of Edom and of all the nations, when Jehovah's name shall be proclaimed to them. Then Israel shall be planted upon their land, and rooted up no more from thence, saith Jehovah Elohim, who hath given it to them, and not to the Gentiles. This is Amos chapter 1, verse 2. Amos chapter 3, verse 7, Amos chapter 5, verse 27, Amos chapter 9, verses 8 and 11 through 15. All right, the Apocalypse in Obadiah. Edom, in the prophecies concerning the restoration of Israel's kingdom in the latter days, is representative of the enemies of Jacob banded together under the guardianship of Gog, who was then the chief of the house of Esau. Obadiah had a vision of this confederacy occupying a similar relationship to Israel hereafter that Edom did in the typical time of the prophet. Obadiah had placed on record the sentence that every one of the mount of Esau shall be cut off by slaughter forever, and shame shall cover them because of their violence against Jacob. That as Edom has drunk upon Jehovah's holy mountain, where also they revel to this day, so shall all the nations drink, and they shall be as though they had not been. For that upon Mount Zion shall be deliverance, and it shall be holy, and the house of Jacob shall possess their possessions, and the house of Jacob shall be a fire, and the house of Joseph a flame, or as Paul styles it, a fire of flame, in 2 Thessalonians chapter 1, verse 8. Right here. And the house of Esau for stubble, and they shall kindle in them and devour them, and there shall not be any remaining of the house of Esau. And that at the time appointed for this, deliverers shall come up in Mount Zion to judge the mount of Esau, and the kingdom thus obtained shall be Jehovah's. Obadiah verses 9, 10, 16 through 18, and 21. The Apocalypse in Micah. Micah was contemporary with the times of Amos and Isaiah. He opens his prophecy apocalyptically by saying, Behold, Jehovah cometh forth out of his place, and will come down and tread upon the high places of the earth. He predicted that because of the iniquity of the Israelites and their rulers, Zion should be plowed as a field, and Jerusalem should become heaps, and the mountain on which the temple stood as the high places of the forest. But he goes on to say that Zion, Moriah, and Jerusalem, although thus trodden underfoot for destroyers, should not always be abased. He coincides with Isaiah and testifies in the same words that in the latter days, yet future, the kingdom of Jehovah, which he terms the mountain of the house of Jehovah, shall have the sovereignty over the empires and the kingdoms of the earth, and that all nations shall concenter around its throne, that Jehovah, the Elohim of Jacob, will enlighten or apocalypse them, and that they will in consequence walk in his ways, that a law and a word will be promulgated from Zion and Jerusalem and be universally obeyed. That war will then be abolished, peace be established as the order of the day, and goodwill everywhere prevail. He further testifies that Israel shall then be a strong nation, with Jehovah, Christ, reigning over them in Mount Zion from thenceforth. And for the Olam or millennium, the first dominion shall come to Zion, and the kingdom to the daughter of Jerusalem. But he also testifies that before this exaltation to dominion, Zion's daughter should dwell in Babylon, in the 10 streets of which she is a wanderer to this day, that in Babylon she shall be delivered. In Babylon Jehovah shall return her from the hand or power of her enemies, the Gentiles. He testifies that when the time of this deliverance shall arrive, the daughter of Zion, which is constituted of the 12 tribes of Israel and the saints, shall arise and thresh with horn of iron and hoof of brass, and beat in pieces many people, whose spoil shall be consecrated to Jehovah, the judge of Israel, and the Adon or sovereign ruler of the whole earth, who in the days of his humanity should be smitten with a rod upon the cheek by the rebellious. Isaiah had foretold that the judge of Israel should come of the house of David. It's Isaiah chapter 9, verses 6 and 7. And Micah predicted he should be born in Bethlehem, Ephrathah. But because of the unworthy treatment he should experience at their hands, he should abandon the nation to its calamities until the time of Zion's travail, when he shall be apocalypsed as a thief in the night, and then the remnant of his brethren shall return on account of the children of Israel. He goes on furthermore to say that in this day of apocalypse, the judge of Israel shall stand and rule in the strength of Jehovah, in the majesty of the name of Jehovah his Eloah, that Israel shall then abide or dwell safely in the Holy Land, because their divine king shall be great to the ends of the earth, that when he is apocalypsed in the day of Zion's travail, writhing in pain under Gentile oppression, the Bethlehem-born judge of Israel shall be the nation's peace, because he and his brethren princes shall expel the Assyrian from Judea, and carrying the war into the land of Nimrod, shall reduce the enemy to the necessity of suing for peace, which will be granted with the loss of dominion and independence. That the remnant of Jacob in more distant nations of the earth shall be as a lion among the beasts of the forest, as a young lion among a flock of sheep, who, if he go through, both treadeth down and teareth in pieces, and none can deliver. But though Israel is to do valiantly in the latter days, he showed that they should previously suffer much because of iniquity, transgression, and sin, that they would be not only nationally corrupt, but socially treacherous and cruel, so that a man's enemies would be those of his own house, that though they should cause the fall of one, he should rise again, and though they should cause him to sit in the darkness of death, Jehovah should become to him a light, that after this cruel treachery, Jerusalem, his enemy, should be covered with shame and trodden down as mire in the streets, and that when the day of her rebuilding should arrive, the decree authorizing it should come from afar. Micah, perceiving that there was hope in Israel's end, petitions Jehovah in their behalf. He prays that they may be fed in Bashan as Gilead, as in the days of old. His supplication is heard, and he is informed by Jehovah that their exodus from Babylon should be after the type and duration of that from Egypt into Canaan, that in this exodus from Babylon the nations shall be confounded when they shall behold the prowess of the Jews, that they shall lick the dust like a serpent and be afraid of Jehovah, our Elohim, Christ, for he will execute vengeance in anger and fury upon the nations, such as they have not heard. But concerning Israel, the prophet testifies that the conqueror of the nations will pass by the transgression of the remnant of his heritage, that he will have compassion on them, that he will subdue their iniquities, and cast all their sins into the depths of the sea, that he will perform the truth to Jacob, the mercy to Abraham, which he has sworn to Israel's fathers from the days of old. And this is Micah chapter 1, verse 3, Micah chapter 2, verses 12 and 13, Micah chapter 3, verse 12, Micah chapter 4, verses 1 through 4, 7, 8, 10, and 13, and Micah chapter 5, verses 1 through 8 and 15, and Micah chapter 7, verses 6, 8, 10, 11, and 14 through 20. The Apocalypse in Nahum. Nahum saw Israel oppressed by Nineveh and predicted its overthrow because its monarch was wicked, and imagined evil against Jehovah. But Israel's deliverance from the Assyrian by the fall of Nineveh was only the type of a greater deliverance at the apocalypse of Messiah. The prophet, therefore, looking forward to this, concerning which Micah's testimony is already before the reader, says, Behold upon the mountains the feet of him that bringeth good tidings, that publisheth peace. O Judah, keep thy solemn feasts, perform thy vows, for the wicked shall no more pass through thee. He is utterly cut off. That's Nahum chapter 1, verse 15. This must be future, because the wicked are not yet cut off, but are in possession of the Holy Land. That's where we'll end for today.